Ever thought about using WordPress to build a website? Maybe you already have one. What's going on right now between WordPress and WP Engine, it might make you want to think twice. It's a conflict, and it could really impact anyone who uses the platform. So today we're diving deep into what started this whole thing and how it might affect you.
Yeah, it's really a story about trying to balance a free and open internet with, well, the reality of businesses that are built on that very foundation.
Okay, so for those who might not know, WordPress, it powers a huge chunk of websites online. It's called a content management system, and it's known for being pretty user-friendly.
Right, exactly. And that's where WP Engine comes in. They're a big deal in web hosting. Basically, they provide the online space for websites to exist. Their thing is making WordPress, even easier, especially for businesses that maybe don't have a whole tech team.
So we've got WordPress, the platform everyone uses, and WP Engine, the company that built a business on making WordPress simpler. So where does the conflict come in?
Imagine, like you own a really busy city center, right? Anyone can open up shop there for free. It's all about open access. Now, someone comes along and builds this fancy high-rise right in the middle of it all, and they're charging premium prices, for the location and all the fancy stuff. That's kind of what's happening here. And recently, the owner of the city center, that's Matt Mullenweg, the WordPress co-founder, he publicly said that the high-rise owner, so WP Engine, isn't giving back enough to keep the city in good shape. He actually called WP Engine a cancer to WordPress.
Wow, he did not hold back. But this is more than just words. WordPress.org, the organization behind the software, they went and banned WP Engine.
Right.
How does a ban even work in this situation? What does it mean for WP Engine users?
Well, this is where it gets tricky for anyone whose website is hosted by WP Engine. Remember all those automatic updates, the ones that keep your site secure, or how easy it is to install plugins? That direct access to all the newest WordPress features? Gone, just like that.
So WP Engine built its whole business on making WordPress easier, but now, because of this fight, things are way more complicated for their users.
Yeah. The people WP Engine was targeting with their WordPress Made Easy approach are now dealing with the biggest problems. It makes you wonder, did their business model make them especially vulnerable? And what does it mean for other companies that depend so heavily on a platform they don't actually control?
If I'm a WP Engine customer, I'm thinking about this and how it impacts my trust in them. They've been saying publicly that the ban isn't a big deal, that it won't affect how websites work, at least not right away. But, they're scrambling, looking for workarounds like mirroring what WordPress.org has, but that sounds like a temporary solution at best.
And that's really important for anyone listening who might be using WP Engine or a similar service. This whole thing shows how crucial it is to understand what's going on between your web host and the platforms they rely on. Take a look at your own web host and think, are you comfortable with how much control they have? And what would happen to your website if something like this happened to you?
It is kind of scary to think that something you depend on, like your web host, could just change overnight because of some conflict you're not even involved in.
It really does make you think about the risks, of relying on someone else for something as important as being online. And it gets even more messy, this whole thing, with this ACF plugin situation.
Okay, yeah, I had to do some homework, refresh my memory on some of the WordPress stuff. What's the big deal with this plugin?
So there's this really popular plugin called Advanced Custom Fields, ACF for short. It's like, think of plugins as apps for your website. They add different functions and let you customize stuff. ACF, it's really popular with developers because it's so flexible.
So how does a plugin get tangled up in this whole WordPress versus WP Engine fight?
Well, back in 2022, WP Engine, they acquired the company that makes ACF. Fast forward to all this drama, and WordPress.org, they decide to fork the ACF plugin, saying it's about security concerns.
Or like choosing a different path. I'm picturing those choose your own adventure books.
Kind of, yeah. In software, forking means they're creating a whole separate version of the code, splitting it in two. Now you've got the original ACF and the WordPress.org version. And that makes things confusing for people who use it because these two versions, they might change in different ways and stop working together properly.
So instead of one plugin that works, people might have to deal with all these conflicts and updates. Not very user-friendly, is it? Especially since both sides are saying they want things to be easy to use.
Exactly. It makes you wonder, is this really about security, like WordPress.org said? Or is this about, trying to get back at WP Engine? Some people who know this stuff, they think this fork happening now is pretty convenient, especially since the security problem they mentioned, it was already fixed in a recent ACF update.
So it's like a power move by Wordpress.org going after one of WP Engine's big acquisitions.
Yeah, it's interesting. And this is where it goes beyond just these two companies. This whole fight, it's like throwing gasoline on a fire that's been burning for a while, this debate about open source software and the businesses that are built on it.
Let's break that down a bit. For people who aren't tech experts, why does this matter so much?
Okay, so WordPress, it's open source software, right? The code is free. Anyone can use it, change it, even build a whole business using it. That whole idea of working together, that's why WordPress got so big. But it also creates this weird power struggle.
Because, on the one hand, you've got this amazing tool that a global community built, mostly for free, and then you've got companies making tons of money from that free work and collaboration. How do you decide what's fair?
That's exactly it. What's a fair way to give back to the project that your entire business is built on? Who gets to decide that? And what if people disagree? This fight, it's bringing these questions out in the open, and it could get messy.
And this goes way beyond just WordPress, right? Other open source projects and companies, they're paying attention to all of this.
Oh, absolutely. This could encourage other projects to rethink how they work with companies or even how open source licensing works. It's a big deal.
Right.
And it's not even about who's right or wrong, really. It's about what happens to the open internet as a whole.
So we're talking about way more than just website stuff. This is about the rules of the internet, the whole digital world.
It really is. And this whole thing, this fight, it could change so much about how tech works.
Because if WordPress.org can do this to WP Engine, what's stopping other open source projects from doing the same thing to other companies?
Right. Imagine if choosing the wrong company for your website meant you might not get important software updates, or like the platform you built your whole business on suddenly changes how things work. This whole conflict makes you think about who has the power and what happens to open source stuff in the future.
It really makes you think twice if you were planning on using WordPress or, honestly, any open source platform.
Yeah, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. This is all about making smart choices when it comes to having a website and being online. It's not just about going with the cheapest thing or the best marketing.
Do your research, right? Figure out what the companies you're trusting actually care about.
Exactly. Ask yourself, do they actually care about the open source projects that their business depends on? Do they prioritize the user, making things good for them, keeping things safe, even if it's not the easiest or most profitable way?
These are big questions, and this whole fight, it shows us that even the things we think are really stable, they can change in a heartbeat.
Yeah, it's like a wake-up call. We need to understand not just what we're using to be online, but who we're trusting to keep it all working.
So as we wrap up, we've got, more questions than answers. But the most important question is one that you have to answer. Knowing what you know now, would you still use WordPress or any open source platform? What would you consider instead, and why?
It's a decision that takes some thought, right? Weigh the risks and the benefits. Because, like we've been saying, the internet's always changing, and knowing what's going on is more important now than ever.
That's it for our deep dive today. Thanks for listening.